I'm a first year resident in anesthesiology and critical care medicine, and today I want to talk about what I've learned about self care through medical school and residency. The way I like to think of it is simple fact that you have to compare your body to the engine of a car, in that what you get out is essentially what you put in. I bring this up because I know I fell into the trap a while ago of just really falling into the mentality of constantly working and going and not giving myself any time to really rest because I thought that is all I needed to be successful. But I realized that in the same way we have an engine that requires maintenance, self-care through medical school and residency is incredibly important. So the first thing I learned about self-care through medical school and residency is that you have to realize that you cannot go 100% all the time. Again, back to the car analogy. If you had to floor your accelerator all the way to the red line, you could do that pretty consistently for a while. But eventually, what starts to happen is that your engine starts to overheat, right? And so you cannot necessarily do that all the time. And this brings me to the first lesson I learned is that you have to be able to set times when you go hard and times where you rest. The heating up period and the cool off period, because both are just as essential. We fall into the trap of thinking that the more I do, the better it is. But just like pretty much anything that exists in this physical world we all live in, there are limits. And so that is the first thing I would recommend you do. It's that you set work hours, because through working, whether in residency or medical school, you need to make sure that you have the time you're going to be working, which is easier because in residency you essentially have that decided for you. However, what is more important is also setting time to rest. Time when you're going to just shut your brain off, meet friends, relax, read a book, an audiobook, go for a walk, whatever it is that you typically do to reset. I highly recommend you budget time and make sure you do this, because that is just as important as the time you spend to rest. Think of it as an oil change, so to speak, because if you do not take the time to maintain your own health, it will eventually catch up to you. Because like I said, you cannot redline indefinitely. And so I highly recommend you consider this first tip. Another thing I learned about self-care in medical school and residency is that you need to try some sort of meditation. I know this sounds very hokey pokey, but I personally have benefited from meditation in the sense that it helped me slow down my mind and my thinking. If you're fortunate enough, you can be able to have subscriptions either through your workplace or through your graduate school, but I cannot recommend this enough because it is very, very easy to fall into the trap of thinking, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do after that? And constantly get in this mindset of never stopping to be present. I say this because that is a very important part, because one thing someone I really look up to told me is that be careful you don't wish away all the best moments of your life. And when we are in this mindset of constantly seeking achievement and attaining goals, it can sometimes lead to us forgetting to remember the journey and to be present. And for me, I have found meditation incredibly helpful. You can try an app such as Headspace or Calm. Again, no sponsorships here. I just know that I have benefited a lot from that, and it's helped me remember that even in moments where things are incredibly difficult, it really matters that you were able to just slow down and, good or bad, just be aware of where you are in life, because you're really nowhere else but the present. Another thing I learned about self-care in medical school and residency is that it really does matter that you take care of your mental health. I think that it is very easy, and sometimes it kind of how is the way things are, to not be able to make time for that. But I have come to find personally that my mental health and where I am heavily influences my work life, my social life, and my spiritual life. And so it's something that I cannot recommend highly enough. At the moment, I am still in therapy, and I think that's something I would highly recommend for everyone. But at the time I started therapy, for the first time in my life, it was a medical school, primarily to help deal with professional and personal insecurities that I had. Because one lesson I just recently learned is that pride and insecurity are often sometimes the same thing. And if you're unable to separate those two, if you're unable to overcome those insecurities, you will in a lot of ways start to undermine your own growth. And I am so grateful for the growth I've undergone, and I know that I could not have done that without therapy. I think one way you can start is Psychology Today, or just Google therapists in your area. Just try to see anyone that will take your insurance. Fortunately, I went to medical school in New York City, and so I had Medicaid in a period that I did not have a job that thankfully covered my therapy. And so I would recommend seeking alternatives to that. I say that because life is stressful, and the truth is there will never be a good time to take care of yourself. Well, if it's not now, maybe it's when you have a family, when you have to plan for your retirement fund. or a parent gets sick. There's always something that is always going to be going on in your life. And as a medical professional, you just need to accept that reality and just really, really tighten up and realize that if I do not do it now and make a habit of it, it probably will never happen. And just like the engine, if you keep revving it, if you never stop to get your oil changes, if you never just park to cool off, eventually the damage will be so severe that it would take way more than it needed to fix than it would have to maintain. Well, that's all I have for you today. I hope you found it helpful.